Finding Frankie is a game that marries mascot horror with parkour movement in various Fall Guys style areas that combine to make for an awesome speedrunning game. And already, in only a few days since the game launched, despite the devs trying to patch some things out, speedrunners have been able to clear the whole game in under 5 minutes. Let's check it out. Now, don't let the short time fool you. Speedrunning this game is not easy, and it's truly mind-blowing what speedrunners have been able to do. Releasing on October 25th, 2024, Finding Frankie takes the player through a cool but deadly play area featuring several locales, and of course, a few horror mascots thrown in the mix as well. Also, before we go on, the developers actually gave me a copy of the game to give out, so leave a comment below where you found Frankie if you'd like to enter the giveaway. Now, normally you have to go through a bunch of areas including a maze, water park, trampoline room, flooded utility area, giant incinerator room, and more. But when speedrunning this game in the any % out of bounds category, we get to skip pretty much all of that. Many runners had their eyes on this game leading up to release, so as soon as it launched, runners and glitch hunters got to work doing what they do best, breaking the absolute shit out of games. And within hours of release, the first speedrun was submitted to speedrun.com by runner Limitless, who set a time of 13 minutes and 9 seconds. Now, certainly a respectable time on its own for a game that normally takes an hour or two to beat, although there were already some out-of-bounds tricks discovered which let runners skip several sections of the game, you still had to waste a bunch of time in the flooded maintenance area, the incinerator room, and bouncy area with the red noob noobs in order to open up the locked door to the final area. But runners knew that there were more skips to be had and more time to be saved, so they kept on searching. Also, fun fact, despite there being 2 locks on this door, and it's saying that 2 keys are required, until it was patched the other day, in the launch version of this game you could actually just open it up with the 1 key from the trampoline area, which is pretty nuts. Anyways, a few hours after this run, already new strats were found and put to action. And although Limitless's run did have him hopping into this vent for this game's mandatory indie horror game vent crawl segment, since towards the end of the vent, you could actually just walk out of it and get out of bounds into the dark void. But now, instead of a bunch of walking to then clip into the flooded maintenance area, runners would now only need to do a few slide jumps in the void to skip over the neon maze section and basically the rest of the game to quickly get to the ending bit, and in a short time, the world record was brought down to the low 7-minute mark, and times were dropping fast. Now, it was also around this point that the developers dropped a speedrun update to the game, in which they added a speedrun timer and even set up a contest where the fastest runner would get their name immortalized in the game on a plaque in the main lobby. Now, at first, this may seem like a pretty cool update, but unfortunately, at least as of the making of this video, the speedrun timer is pretty busted and doesn't reset properly, and despite being called a speedrun update, the devs actually ended up patching some speedrun exploits. Now, I've mentioned in past videos how I'm not a huge fan of devs patching speedrun tricks that most players wouldn't ever discover on their own. But in this case, being able to just walk out of bounds in the vent is something that I could see many people doing by accident, so yeah, this one makes sense. But on the flip side, they also patched out a trick where runners could slide jump their way onto this balcony and then jump out of this window to also get out of bounds, which personally, I don't think anyone playing this game casually would ever find, but as a little wink towards speedrunners, after patch, you can still get up onto the ledge to the balcony, and although you can't just jump over the railing here anymore, there is now a new secret message here that reads, "Stop messing up my game show, signed from Frankie." Pretty cool. And although the devs had patched those tricks, this didn't stop the speedrunners from trying to find new ones, at all. As only a few hours later, a brand new trick was discovered, and this one skips basically the entire intro. And this is where the main speedrun route stands as of the making of this video, so let's check it out. But before we do, if you're enjoying my content and would like to help support the channel, get some extra perks by becoming a member today. Check out the join button below the video for some more info. Anyways, time for the speedrun starts after skipping the intro cutscene and as soon as you load into a new game and are able to move around. Now, unfortunately, the game starts with a 39-second unskippable opening bit where the player is trapped in this room as the TV gives us some exposition. But that doesn't matter here, so as soon as the door opens enough, we can slide through, and instead of opening the next door like we normally are supposed to, we can actually conveniently use the objects on the wall here to clip out of bounds. Now, before we move on, I mentioned the sliding earlier, but this is probably the most important movement mechanic in the speedrun, since, as you can see, it gives the player an almost ridiculous amount of speed really quickly, and combining this with jumping makes getting around super quick. Anyways, we can actually slide and jump into the wall here, and this will give the player enough height to jump on top of the circuit panel here, and then we can jump along the wall to get onto the fire alarm, and then from there we can jump onto the Frankie mask beside us. So yeah, it's very important to actually not grab the suit and mask in this run. Then when on the mask, you'll want to back up basically as much as you can without falling back to the floor, and then if you align yourself properly a little to the left, you can do another slide jump into the wall to boost yourself up through the ceiling and out of bounds. There's not a lot of room to build up enough speed to do a slide jump on this mask, so I find this to actually be one of the more difficult tricks to get consistently. Anyways, once out of bounds here, we can do another slide jump into the corner here to get up onto a ledge here, and yeah, now we're really in the dark void. Now I've boosted up the brightness and contrast in this section for this video to make it a bit easier to see, but when playing normally, even with the brightness cranked all the way to 11, it's pretty dang hard to see anything in the void here. Oh, and yeah, here we can also see some pretty cool stuff out of bounds like this always loaded in area here that's normally never seen. Perhaps for a future Lost Bits video? Back to the run though, we can then do another slide jump across here to get a bit higher, and then from there we want to slide jump to the left to get onto this platform here. Now this is another pretty tricky trick to get down, as there's an incredibly annoying invisible wall here, which if you hit, it will block you and cause you to drop down into this room, which essentially soft locks you, requiring you to restart the whole run. But if you do make it onto here, you can then walk along forward a bit and then jump across onto this lit up ring platform, and you can then jump up and walk along to this area where I think is the most stressful jump of this run, as you have to do a giant leap of faith to get onto that vent that's incredibly hard to see over there. One mess up and it's all over, so you better not mess up. Once on though, you can move up and start pause buffering to load in the next area. You end up pause buffering quite a few times in this section, and for the uninitiated, it's basically just a way to manipulate the game into loading and deloading assets around the player when you're in the void. Otherwise, you run the risk of just falling out of bounds eternally. There is, however, also a backup strat here if you pause buffer a bit too late and end up on top of the tube here, as if you go back, you can trigger the cutscene where Hotline Henry starts chasing you. And doing this will also give you a checkpoint that the speedrun community has now dubbed the Tetra Point. This can also be incredibly helpful for practicing the speedrun, as if you die at any point after this, it will at least give you a little safety net instead of having to restart all the way back at the beginning. And by jumping on this bounce pad onto this sheet metal, and then crouch jumping into this corner, you can move out of bounds and then get right back on top of the vent where you need to be. You just gotta be careful with Henry below, as his hitbox actually extends up quite a bit. So if you're above him as he passes below you, he'll still actually jump scare you. Also, while we're talking about backup strats, this clip at the start and the jumping in the void can be quite tough. So there is a slightly easier route to get to the top of this vent section. You can just play the game normally but fast until you get to the top of this section. And then if you spam the heck out of jumping into this panel here, you can actually get on top of it. And then after slide jumping up this wall, you can get out of bounds, and then you can jump across here, and then make a leap of faith in this direction, and if you pause buffer enough, you'll land on top of the maze area, from which you can then do another slide jump across, and after pause buffering some more, you'll end up on the vent where you need to be. It's definitely not as fast as the other strats, but this is quite a bit easier and consistent. Anyways, from here, we'll want to do another slide jump off of this section, and then almost immediately start pause buffering to load in the next area. And once you see this metal wall thing load in a second or two you have to move around it before the geometry below you deloads, and then you'll want to pause buffer again to load it back in, and once it's back, you can run or slide forward to do one last little bit of out of bounds navigating. After moving forward quickly, as if you're too slow, Henry still somehow manages to catch you, we want to get to these red lines here, fall down to the right, and then move left onto the magma looking patch here. And then after moving forward a bit, but not too much to avoid Frankie's hitbox here, we can turn right and then make another left, and from here we do another sliding leap of faith forward, and as we fall, we want to aim towards these blocks here. And once we get close enough, we can pause buffer a bit, and this will actually load in the room behind the locked door. And yeah, just like that, after activating the elevator, we are on our way to the end section of the game. The elevator then brings us to Frosted Peak, the giant Fall Guys-like obstacle course which we need to climb. Now, there aren't really any out-of-bounds glitches here, but there are a few movements you can do to go a bit faster. And you don't need to do this, but the pink slime here actually only starts rising if you enter the bottom of the area through the normal gate. So if you do a few slide jumps to get in on the side here, you can actually do this part slime-free, which can be way less stressful. And with this, even if you do get yeeted off, you actually won't die. But yeah, here you just have to slide and jump your way up the mountain and get by all of the obstacles, and after getting to the top, you can do one last slide jump to cheese your way right over the treacherous spinning platform below, and then after sliding through this hallway, you can do one final trick by just walking before this blue hexagon here, where I guess the floor lacks collision, to quickly drop down to the Hexa Havoc area below, skipping a cutscene entirely. And then you can actually skip another cutscene once you drop down by just reloading the previous checkpoint. And that's about it for the speedrun tricks, as since this boss fight is on a 2-minute and 10-second timer, even if you could do anything cool here, you'd still have to wait out the time to end the battle. So after avoiding Frankie stomping and jumping around while trying not to fall down too quickly, once the timer runs out, we have to run over to one of the two switches on the bottom layer of hexagons, and after hitting it, that is time for the speedrun, at least how it's currently timed on the leaderboard. There are a few more cutscenes and an ending section that, although still playable, is also on a timer with no chance of dying. So since the ending section is the same for anybody, it's just excluded from the official time. Either way, I think it's honestly pretty crazy that if you exclude the almost 40-second intro segment and the 130-second boss fight, there's only like 2.5 minutes of regular gameplay in this speedrun, rivaling Hello Neighbor 2's speedrun time. Anyways, as of the making of this video, the current world record is held by Softy with a crazy load removed time of just under 5 minutes, with a load removed time of 4 minutes and 54 seconds. The high-level runs employ all of the tricks I previously mentioned, they just do it really fast, and often do even more crazy and risky jumps to get around even faster. Like I said at the start, don't let the fast runtime deceive you. This is definitely not one of the easiest games to speedrun, so absolutely massive shoutouts to all of the runners that can pull off these tricks consistently. It was really cool to spend some time with the runners in the Discord server, having them coach me, and see them absolutely blast through the game live. Now, the speedruns of this game are getting pretty optimized already, so I can see the time getting dropped a bit more if a run goes perfectly with little to no mistakes, but unless another out-of-bounds glitch gets found, I think between 4.5 to 5 minutes is where the record will stay for the near future. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, check out some of my other speedrun videos, and be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell to find your way back to the channel in the future. And if you'd like to try speedrunning this game yourself, head on over to the Finding Frankie speedrunning Discord, which I'll have linked for you in the description below. And as always, thank you all so much for running with me today, and I will see you in a bit.